but let me start by sharing a little bit about On Point Education Advisory. We are a boutique consulting practice committed to providing personalized guidance to students as they explore education options to institutes in the US, UK, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, and of course, India. We believe in providing 360-degree support to the student, working with their strengths to plan life in and beyond high school. Today, in the first of this three-part series, we will explore the visual arts with Thomas Duncan, Director of Admissions at the School of Museum of the Fine Arts at Tufts University. Thomas has worked in SMFA admissions for nearly a decade and helps run the Library Sound series, which invites people to make a racket in the library. He studied studio art and biotechnology at Rochester Institute of Technology before attending the post-baccalaureate program at SMFA. We also have two current SMFA students who will be joining us and sharing some of their experiences through the application process and of their time at the SMFA. Welcome, Maddie, Pamela, and Thomas. Some housekeeping announcements. All participants will be muted. Video will be live only for the panelists. Questions can be posted in the Q&A box. Thomas and I will address the questions towards the end of the interaction. And now, over to Thomas.
Hello, and thanks for having us today. Very excited to be here. And I'm gonna start in just by giving a little bit of an overview of the SMFA at Tufts University and Tufts University and in general on how students access the arts there. So I'm gonna actually share my screen and show you some images. Excellent. All right. So to talk a little bit about the School of Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University, there are a couple of things that distinguish our program right off. One is that we are an art school inside of a research university, and we provide the best parts of both an independent art school and a larger research university. So students are able to find all the studios and equipment and professional networks and the community of committed artists and creative entrepreneurs that they would expect from a standalone art school, but also they're finding the support, the travel, research, student organizations, and diversity of interests and opportunities of a larger university. Tufts is an interdisciplinary university, so we're really interested in getting to know and support all of the unique combinations of interests that students bring with them. We think the most exciting things happen at the intersections of different disciplines. So whether that's engineers working with theater or English majors and mathematicians, or studio artists working with architects and sound engineers, we get very excited about how these combinations can pose big questions and solve problems in new ways. So inside of the studio, we offer completely individualized majors. Students can access any medium, any class, or any type of equipment that's relevant to the things that they want to explore. They can focus on a single area. We have amazing photographers and painters, but also students who come and combine design work, sound work, photography together. We get very excited about the ways in which students can explore these different things to talk about the issues that they're excited about, to address aesthetic concerns, to do research, to share their voices. That's exciting to us. And I will say that beyond those studio disciplines, students are able to expand beyond into 150 different majors and minors at the university. So whether students are interested in entrepreneurial leadership or biology or psychology or any of those sort of things, they can combine those together as they're relevant for their individual goals. We're also partnered with the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. The School of the Museum of Fine Arts was actually founded as a part of the museum way back in the late 1800s. And the museum is a major international museum. It's the second largest art collection in North America. A pretty amazing set of resources for us, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that relationship works. But we also provide again, as a university, we provide a lot of support for students to explore careers and explore the world through travel, exchange programs, research opportunities, and internships. Those are things that we really value for students to get a sense of, trying out the things that they're doing, making connections, bringing their work beyond just the studio out into the outside world. That's stuff that is also very valuable to us. And we want students to gain those valuable experiences while they're here as students. And I'll also say that we have a pretty big international community at this school. We welcome students from all over the world. Right now, we have students from over 90 different countries in all 50 states around the United States. And these are students who have really different backgrounds and bring different experiences into our community. That is something that we are, again, very excited about. And finally, I'll just mention that we're a 100% need-met school. So for any student, whether they are a US citizen or an international student, they have the same financial support if they are accepted to the school. And that is, in brief, we guarantee that we will meet whatever gap there is between what a family can afford and what the entire cost of the school is. So this means we can invite students from very different economic backgrounds and make sure that they have the support to be here, to be students, to be focused on their work. So we're very proud of that. So just to pull one of these themes out, what I think is so interesting about our setup is that there's a lot of flexibility to find the right balance. So there are students who are interested in the arts at Tufts who express that in a lot of different ways, who explore that in a lot of different ways. And it's very easy to make that balance work for you. As a student, you could be a student who is pursuing a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science degree. You could be an engineer and join an elective or a club. You could live in the art house on the Medford campus, or maybe if you want to take that next step and dive in and commit to a certain area in studio art making, you would like to have a minor in studio art. So you could do that as an engineer or as a student in the School of Arts and Sciences. You might also be an art history major who wants to take studio classes to get a better understanding of how artists create or the properties of specific materials. If you're interested in taking that next step and really committing to hands-on work in the studio and you want to earn a degree in that area, you might pursue the BFA program at our school, and I want to say that doesn't cut you off from all the other resources of Tufts University. You can still explore through minors, or maybe you think I would like to earn 2 degrees simultaneously during my time at the university, in which case maybe something like our combined degree program makes sense. It's a 5-year program, and I'll show you a little bit, that allows students to have 2 different degrees when they finish in 5 years. So they would have both a studio art degree, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and a degree in another area, a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. And these are just little breakdowns of those 2 programs. These are the 2 programs for students who are interested in earning a degree in studio art. And as you can see, both of them include a lot of hands-on studio art time. So combined degree program, it's important to remember this is a Bachelor of Fine Arts. You're going to earn a Bachelor of Fine Arts as well. You're really going to have an art school experience. You're going to gain lots of practical skills, make connections, try things out, make work. It's going to be exciting, but you're also going to dive in just as passionately to something else that you're interested in, whether it's economics or art history or anything else that you might choose as that other degree path. So to come back around to this kind of best of both worlds setup that I think we're able to offer, I want to emphasize that students who are in programs like the BFA program or the combined degree program, they're going to have a real art school experience. There is an amazing dedicated faculty of working artists. There are people working in studios, making ambitious bodies of work. There are connections and professional connections to make. There are ways to show work in galleries and get connected to the Boston art scene. But I also want to say what is interesting about our community is there's this whole other part. We're part of an amazing community of thinkers and researchers and scientists and authors and dancers and philosophers and entrepreneurs and activists. And we really get very enthusiastic about finding those connections between all of these different things, or for students to exist in many of those roles simultaneously. This is a quote from one of our teachers who's very popular, Floor Vandeveld. If you're surrounded by people that think differently from you, it opens up all sorts of creative possibilities for you to think about your own practice. And this is a philosophy that Flor brings into her classes. She is someone who teaches sculpture, emerging technologies, sound. She brings together engineering majors and BFA students to collaborate on large projects. This is again part of the ethos of the school, to find these connections, to allow students to make connections that maybe haven't been made before, to explore them, to dive into them. And I'll tell you two quick examples just to give you a sense of how students make different connections that way. So for instance, Evelyn, great student at the school who's out there doing well as a studio artist, is someone who is exploring issues of environmental sustainability. She's really interested in the ways in which plastic waste makes its way through the ocean. Make these gorgeous large-scale colored pencil drawings. These are giant and beautiful. And as she did a research project where she traveled to this beach in Hawaii where a lot of plastic waste actually washes up on the coastline. And she decided to start collecting little bits of microplastics that she would find there that had washed up. And she came back and found that she wanted to make portrait photographs of these little bits of plastic, but that wasn't something she could do on her own. She actually collaborated with scientists in a lab to make these giant scale photographs of these tiny little bits of plastic that were floating around. And she blew those up into these monumental scale portraits of these plastic bits. So that was something where she's a studio artist, but is drawing on the expertise of people in labs and that are doing scientific research in order to expand the way that she's able to talk about an issue that's important to her. That's one pathway. Another story, Lynette is a student who came to the school and took the issues that she was exploring in her artwork and really expanded them by collaborating with engineers. She is someone who was interested in starting an international design firm. So she was taking classes in international relations, entrepreneurial leadership, design, installation, because she wanted to think about how you make things at a large outside scale. And also, as I said, collaborating with the engineering department in order to make apps. She designed an app that helped hearing impaired people navigate the subway system in Boston. She did public projects during some of her internships abroad in England. She works for this great big cloud computing company doing user interface design now in Silicon Valley. But that's another kind of pathway. It led her into doing design work and taking those issues that she explored in the studio and expanding into like technological realms with that work. So we offer a lot of different studio art areas at the school, everything from fibers to film to performance to animation, sculpture, virtual reality, painting, papermaking. You can look at lists of these. And as I said before, any student in the program can access any of these things. They can focus on one, they can focus on 8. They can follow these pathways in ways that that may not even be immediately obvious. Like a painting student might say like, well, I'm a painter, I don't really need anything beyond painting and drawing, but maybe you decide you want to learn how to work in the wood shop because you want to make your own stretcher bars and frames. Maybe you decide you'd like to make a nice monograph about your artwork, and so you collaborate with people in the book arts department in order to do that, or you work with photography professors to think about how you might document your work better. Or another storyline is perhaps you're a painter and you're making your paintings and a friend of yours does this amazing installation piece, and you say, wow, how did you do that? And you say, oh my goodness, you've got to take Megan McMillan's class. We made these amazing installation pieces. And so you take that class and suddenly you decide, well, really, I think I would like to make paintings that are installations, they're sculptural, I project videos on them, I take them into virtual reality spaces so people can explore them from all over the world. Easy enough to do any of those things at the school. And as I said before, you can expand beyond the studio into any of these 100 other areas that are offered at the university. And we find students who put really interesting personal spins on how these things connect together. There are amazing students who are making artwork about their interest in economics as well as their immersion in the studio. Those are things that are really exciting. And I should say that may sound like a lot, but our school offers an awful lot of support to help students figure out what their pathways are like. And maybe this is a great moment to involve Maddie and Pamela a little bit. Maddie, do you want to talk? I think one of the nice things about the school is you immediately have support from advisors and small classrooms. Maddie, do you want to add a little bit of insight into how you get support to navigate some of the decisions you make in your curriculum?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie, as Thomas said. So I found that when I came to SMFA, I was extremely supported by not one, but two academic advisors. In the combined degree program, they give you an academic advisor for your academic classes on the Medford campus and an advisor for your SMFA art classes. And they work together to really help support you and your academic interests and your art interests and how they overlap. Oh no.
Cool.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Someone in the chat said that my voice wasn't coming in properly. I'm sorry, guys.
I know it could also be the Wi-Fi on their end, so don't worry. We can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you, Maddie.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, you get multiple advisors who are always there to support you, point you in the correct direction, whatever that may be for you, or suggest classes that might have been far out of your range of comfort. This semester, one of my professors randomly, or one of my advisors randomly suggested I take a papermaking class, even though my art practice is primarily in photography. And it really changed my entire art practice and my focus on photography. So
amazing, yeah. And Pamela, do you want to talk? There's this whole other structure at our school that is quite exciting, called review board process. And Pamela, do you want to add a little bit about maybe like the classroom and the review board process and how that helps the students to navigate the things that they will do in their classes?
Yeah, for sure. So the review, can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. So the review board process is actually really cool at the school. So you get like two faculty members from the school. They might be faculty members that you had in one of your classes, or just someone that you've never met before at the school, or you like have yet to meet or take a class with. And you get two of like other students in the school, whether it's like an undergrad or graduate student, and you guys kind of come together, and it's like your own personal like hour of time to just talk about your work and reflect really on what you've done, and get all the feedback that like any questions that you have about your work, any like concerns, or you just want to share your work with people, if you have that opportunity at the end of the semester. And it's like really, really cool because then they can introduce you to artists that you've never heard of. They can introduce you to like different ideas or different ways to see your work that you might not have been able to see before. And it's just like it's always been for me like a very welcoming and very like safe and like environment for me to talk about my work. And I've always come out on the other side with like something to work on or something to like really, really like pursue that I've just never thought about before. So it's a really, really cool experience.
Cool. Thank you, Pamela. Yeah. Yeah. And so to wrap up my little overview, I'll talk about the museum again a little bit. So we're the SMFA campus is right next to the Museum of Fine Arts in the Avenue of the Arts district of Boston. So we're surrounded by visual and performing arts schools and this nice public park that runs through the city. But that collection is pretty amazing. It is an encyclopedic collection that runs from ancient antiquity to contemporary art pieces. It is an inspiration to us. We can go there for free. We have lots of great opportunities to talk with curators and to see shows. But also there's this whole other part that I'll just sketch in briefly. Like, this is a huge community of people who work in art fields. There are, conservators and curators and visiting artists and designers and historians that provide, support and collaboration. There are internships there. There are student work opportunities. So there's a huge art scene in Boston, which is really exciting, but the museum is also this very special place that we have a connection to and that supports our students. And one of the great ways in which they support our students is they feature shows by our students, which is a huge deal. This is a museum that has over 1 million visitors annually. And these are in the middle of the contemporary art department. So there are current student shows and recent alumni shows that happen every year. In fact, there are 2 recent alumni shows coming up in the next couple of months, which are going to be amazing. Helena's work is amazing. There's going to be some really good stuff. So this is a really great opportunity for our students to contextualize their work, to learn about history, to make connections to professionals, to explore that stuff, and to get their work seen. And finally, I'll just talk a little bit about the community again. I think one of the really nice things is that we were able to draw students from all over the world. Our incoming class this year is about 31% international students. And we talked a little bit before, they're really small class sizes, so you can get to know faculty members and other students really quickly. We're drawing students from all over the country and all over the world. And there's lots of support on campus. There are over 300 student organizations. So students are able to come to campus, make connections through both clubs, through resources in the schools, through the identity and affinity centers. There's a lot of support for students to get their voices heard, make connections, feel like a part of a community from the moment that they arrive at the school. So yeah, that's my little overview. I'll stop sharing for a moment here.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for sharing about all the opportunities available at SMFA. And I guess, given the fact that SMFA is part of the larger Tufts umbrella, the students get a distinct advantage as they have many avenues to broaden their perspective and bring so many different influences into their artistic practice. Moving on, I did have one question from Sigus here. Is moving back and forth between the campuses difficult? Is there a shuttle provided? Are students on their own? Is it challenging to make your schedule work with the commuting time?
Yeah, I'll say there is a shuttle that runs all the time, and it runs late into the night, so that it is. And I will also just contextualize, and then I'm going to throw it over to the students who will be better, to address this. But the 2 campuses are 5 miles from one another, so it's not a huge distance. You could bike between the 2 campuses if you want, but weather does not always permit such a thing. So there's a shuttle service that's going back and forth all the time. It has Wi-Fi, it's filled with students. I also see faculty on it, so you have time, you could do homework, take a nap, hang out, chat with people. But maybe Maddie and Pamela would like to add in about their experiences.
Yeah, absolutely, I can talk. So for me, the shuttle is honestly one of the greatest spaces to talk with friends and have some downtime before and after classes. It's a very short ride. It's approximately 15 minutes. So it's super easy to get between the 2 campuses. And it's a beautiful, large bus. It's gone through multiple different renovations in the past 2 years that I've been here. And now it's a very nice city bus. And yeah, it's very manageable to balance your schedule. Definitely, I use my advisors in order to make sure that I'm not running between campuses at crazy times of the day. But it is definitely manageable if you are in the combined degree program and if you are in the BFA program. And also another side note about the shuttle is, regardless of what program you are in, it's free to everyone at the school. So you don't necessarily have to be a BFA student in order to use the shuttle.
Yeah, you can just hop on as an engineering student, come over to see some shows at the museums and stuff. Pamela, did you want to add anything?
Oh no, I think Maddie got it. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
All right, moving on. Could you tell our audience a little bit about the visual arts ethos at SMFA and some thoughts on what applicants should keep in mind while developing their portfolios, not only for SMFA, but art and design schools in general? Should they be focusing on depth, breadth? Are there any particular kind of pieces that you would like to see while reviewing the portfolio? That would be great.
Sure. I'm gonna share my screen again just to show some images and to share some thoughts about that. My computer there. So let's get rid of that. Great. So there are 2 things. And I'll get to the ethos part as I explain a little bit about how you might approach making a portfolio. I have a little bit of bad news at the outset, and that is that and maybe Maddie and Pamela will back me up here, but I think as many art schools as you speak with, you will have just that many different versions of what a portfolio should be, ideally. Everyone has a slightly different twist on it, and I apologize for that in advance. I don't know why schools don't all find one thing, but I will say that there is an advantage here. Often schools are asking you questions based on how their program operates. So my thought is, just as I would say about the like supplemental questions you might be asked in an application, do these questions make sense to you? Does it seem like there's a good reason for them to be asked? I think the same about a portfolio. If a school is asking you for specific things and it makes sense to you and you think, yeah, that's exactly what I want to show off, then maybe you're going to like their philosophy overall. So it's a good idea to ask lots of questions and to really ask every school. The good news is, people like me in admissions offices, people like Maddie and Pamela, who are also tour guides at school, they're very happy to talk about what the school is like and what things we're looking for. So use those resources, reach out, whether it's through virtual National Portfolio Day events or through reaching out to schools directly. There are people there who will talk to you about what they look for in a portfolio. I'm going to give you some quick overview things, but again, I just want to give you that warning. You need to ask schools what things they're looking for. But one way that you can start to just conceptualize what different things might be asked is to think about what different styles of organization art programs have. There are like 3 big umbrellas. Again, everyone has their own variation, but one style that's quite popular is art programs with a foundation year. And what this means is, the first year that you arrive at the school, you're going to plug into a kind of preset curriculum where you do a little bit of all of these different styles of art making. You do some 2D work, 3D work, drawing, painting. You try a little bit of all of those things. Then you focus in on what you'd like your major to be in your second year. There are a lot of reasons for a program like that. It allows students who haven't tried things to come in, like get an overview, see some different skill sets, try things maybe they didn't try before, and then to think about what they would like to focus on. And because a program, well, I'll tell you about all the programs and then I'll tell you how that might affect what they're looking for in a portfolio. So a second type is a direct entry program. So a direct entry program asks a student to apply right into a specific thread at the school. So you might apply and say, I am an animation major. It means if you want to hit the ground running and you don't want to try anything else, and you know exactly what you want to do and you're not worried about your mind changing, you might go into a program like this. It means you're going to find a very specialized curriculum and a lot of people who are very laser focused on that same curriculum, right? So there are some advantages to that, but there's a little drawback if you explore and find other things. It might mean you're going to have to start over. There can be some trouble with that, but it's a great way if you are absolutely positive about what you're doing to just kind of jump in and run with it. The third kind, and this is the kind of school that we are, is an interdisciplinary studies program. And there are some variations here. There are some schools that will still have like a core program. We have a very open curriculum. We don't have a preset core year. It's just a sort of personalized experience from the day you arrive. You work with advisors, you choose classes, you decide, I have some strengths, try new things. You might set up a first year that does a whole bunch of different things because you haven't had access before, or maybe you've come from a school where you did try everything out and you're like, now I really want to run with the things I'm excited about. So these programs really make, they emphasize the like sort of the conceptual core, and I don't mean conceptual by like, okay, I made a box and I buried it in the backyard and I put a plaque in a gallery and that's like conceptual art. What I mean by conceptual is that questions are at the beginning. What are you interested in doing? Whether that's an aesthetic thing, like I love the way light travels through skin, and I really want to celebrate this beautiful and delicate phenomenon, or I want to talk about an issue that I think is very important. The point is that we ask questions about what you want to do and then build the technical skills to do that work. So that it's just a matter of like how we organize the questions and then how we decide what things you should dig into and build skills in. So given those things, there may be some lessons you can draw about what a school is going to be looking for in a portfolio. So a program that has a core year is likely looking at your portfolio to see how are you going to measure up if you're put into a drawing class, a painting class, a 2D class, a 3D class. They want to see some fundamental skills. And so there may be an emphasis on like observational drawing from life, how you work with composition. They also want to know about your voice and your creativity, right? So they want to see how you take that and put your spin on it. And I think any school is going to want to see how you put your personal spin on things. And you might show some variety in a portfolio like that shows that you've got some range if you've had access to some other materials. And you might be including things like this drawing here, like skill building exercises. Like this isn't, I would imagine that this student didn't make this as like a final piece that they think of like, that's my voice as an artist. Rather, that's something that shows how they are able to interact with a body in a space. Like maybe they had, a 10-minute time limit. So work like that makes sense in a portfolio like this, where they're really looking at assessing your skills and then thinking about what your voice is like. Thinking about that second category that I set up, the direct entry program. Here, there's a slightly different question asked, right? They're saying, is this student ready for our animation program or our design program or whatever it is that you're opting into? And so that's a framing question for you in your portfolio as well. How does this work support my case to enter into that specific program? Now, if you talk to schools like this, it may be that they have leeway. It doesn't necessarily mean that an animation person needs to have a whole bunch of animation, but they'll be looking for specific skills that are going to feed into your success in an animation department. So that's something to keep in mind the whole time. And maybe you want to curate that work to be answering that bigger question. So they would look for development of your voice in an area of interest. They want to see exploration and experimentation, but again, in support of that area that you're saying you're interested in, they want to see your technical and core competencies like any school. And in terms of like unfinished work, they might like to see things like process pieces. Like here, this is someone taking a logo, working through variations, thinking about applications of it. That feels like a good approach in a portfolio like this to add in things like that. And finally, this is an example, it's a student who's at our school is, of a portfolio that might be appealing. And I want to be careful here to say, like, an interdisciplinary program does not mean that every student who comes to the school is an interdisciplinary artist. It means that the curriculum is interdisciplinary and that you have access to different things, and that we think that there's a value of being in a classroom with people who have different expertise, who might have different perspectives. There's a value in having access to different things. Again, you can be, and we'll see some examples of people who are giving a portfolio that's in one medium. That is totally acceptable. But just to illustrate something here, so for Liz's portfolio, we've got all this like strange stuff. Clearly, she's someone who's interested in photography. And if I look at this, I don't know if she can draw or not, but I also feel like that's totally irrelevant to me. And I wouldn't ask her that. I think I see someone who's committed, who's thinking through their work, who's trying to figure out what their perspective is. So she's taking her photographs and burning them and redocumenting them, printing them onto orange peels, hanging them in the forest and letting rain destroy them, taking photographs of her friends and having her friends jump through those photographs and then photographing that again, building little houses out of her photographs. To me, that's someone who's like, I feel like this comes from a person. I'm really getting their mind at work, the things that they're interested in, seeing their commitment. That is exciting to me. And so just to come back, I don't think that I need to see a figure drawing from Liz, because that doesn't seem to be what her work is about. So for an interdisciplinary program, I think you can think about showing, you do want to show off your technical skills, but I think showing them off in support of the things that you specifically care about is a great way to approach it. You can still put in all those other things, still lives, figure drawings, but I think the main question for a school like ours is, what do you really love doing as an artist? Whatever that is. I don't have a right answer for that. And I wouldn't suggest that there's one kind of portfolio that is the right fit. So just to really like make explicit now the things that, and this connects to our ethos in terms of art making at the school, and that is that there isn't one right way to make art. But we're very interested in getting to know how you would like to make art, what things you value, or what you want to express. And so what I'm asking when I'm looking at a portfolio, or like, what are like everyone, what are your technical skills? What are the tools you have in your toolbox? That's helpful to understand. But also, I'm looking for some things that aren't quite as straightforward as they have great observational skills, but like resiliency, collaboration, dedication. What are the things that you really do on your own? Then I ask another question that's very important to me. What do you want to do with the tools in your toolbox? Not just that you have these skills, but like, how do you apply them? What do you explore as an artist? then I like to see some independent commitment to art making. That doesn't mean that your work has to come from always outside of a classroom, but like, how do you invest your time into classroom assignments? Like, how do you take things another step? How do you make them your own? Of course, like any school, we look for a fit between your practice and goals and our curriculum, because we want everyone to come and thrive at our school. So if we don't offer the things that you want to do, then I wouldn't want you to come and be disappointed. So we want to find a good match there so that we know we can support you and the things that you want to explore. And finally, again, your unique voice and interest really help us to understand what you value, not just but what you've been asked to do, but what you're excited about doing. And so this last little thing, and then I'm going to share some portfolios and ask Maddie and Pamela to talk a little bit about it. But again, there's not one kind of portfolio that we're looking for. We want to get to know you. I think about that just like your personal statement in your application. It's not that there's one kind of essay that wins at every school, but rather it's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to us. We want to get to know you. And we want to find people who think, wow, they're going to be wonderful community members. They're going to love what they find here. So really just introduce yourself. Let us know what it is that you're interested in doing. Like I say, a portfolio should be as personal as your personal essay. I should be able to look at that and say, like, that's coming from a person. I think if you showed it to a friend, they should know, wow, that is definitely your work. And then highlight how you use the tools available to you to express yourself. There are lots of different backgrounds. Some students have lots and lots of art classes to draw on, lots of support. Other students really haven't had an opportunity to explore a lot of that. That's okay. There isn't like, again, there's not one kind of portfolio that gets everyone in. I try to put all of that into context. What resources do you have? What access do you have? And then say, what have you made of those things that you have access to? That's very important to us, not just in the portfolio, but across all of the different things we look for in an application. How do you take advantage of the resources that you have available to you in the classroom? Those are things that we spend a lot of time putting into context. And finally, I will just say, trust your own voice. I'm looking to get to know you. Tell me who you are. That's an exciting thing. And so Maddie and Pamela were kind enough to also allow us to share a little bit of the portfolios that they applied with. And I'd love for them both to talk a little bit about what their process was like, what they heard as advice. But I'll just quickly say, because I love both of their portfolios, just a little bit about what immediately stuck out to me in terms of what they were doing here. And Maddie's, I just selected a few from the portfolio that she presented, but one of the things that immediately struck me is, we see that there are certainly some concerns about the technical aspect of photography, like exploring some different ways of making a photograph in the darkroom, like digitally, black and white, color. And I feel like she's really putting a stamp on her voice in these things. So we get variation from like almost abstract, like formal pieces to something that's really immersive. Like this photo struck me right away. And I often find that, in photo portfolios, sometimes people are just kind of like making a thing that stands in for seeing another thing. Like I like this lamp. Here's a photograph that shows you the lamp, and I'm left as a viewer thinking, I would like to see that lamp in person. But what are we even looking at in this photograph? This one, I get drawn right in, and I see like figures emerging from this fog. To me, that's like a fascinating image, and I want to see that photograph. Like maybe I want to go to that place too, but really I'm real struck with this like aesthetic object, which is exciting. Maddie, talk a little bit about what are things you heard? What were the choices you made in putting together your portfolio?
Yeah, so one of the best pieces of advice that I received about putting together my portfolio was to think thematically. So as a photographer, you take a lot of photos. I had hundreds and hundreds to choose from. Different mediums obviously have different constraints in terms of number of objects, but it was very difficult for me to put together a portfolio that felt very representative of me. And in order to choose different photos, I really thought thematically about multiple different themes. The photo that Thomas mentioned of the fog, I was thinking about texture, and I had a small series about texture. Some of these other ones were about home and family and a sense of connection there. So thinking thematically really helped me to kind of contextualize all of the things that I was thinking about as I was putting together my portfolio. And like Thomas said, trusting your gut is one of the most important parts of putting together a portfolio, but also using the people around you to support you, whether it be your teachers, your art teachers, academic advisors, or whoever it is you have helping you out, or just your friends and family. Sometimes I would go up to my friends and be like, which photo do you like better? And hold up 2 photos. And most of them didn't have a very strong art background. And that was honestly helpful for me because they were like, oh, this one is clearly better to me. And I'm like, okay, thank you. It's going in the portfolio now. So that was also super helpful for me to put together my entire portfolio.
Yeah, that's great advice too. I say that all the time, like show it off. Sometimes, one, it's great to kind of really focus on the things that you love, but also, and this is just advice for art making in general, show it to lots of people. Start to get, people are going to have very different takes on what you're after. And maybe you as an artist start to think about like, how do I as an artist, like, what is my intent? How does it connect with what other people see there? Also happy, to show Pamela's portfolio, which I really love too. And I'll just say really quickly, and then have Pamela talk a little bit, is this is such a great example too of, Pamela has a portfolio that kind of like has its cake and eats it too, right? Like it shows off these incredible technical skills, but there's not a single image in there that feels like it's just rote or just an exercise. She takes these observational skills, like this ability to look at the figure and to really like bring it to life, but then it feels so personal. There are stories about her family and her feelings and relationships that come through in each one of those. And, that's something, that combination is something that really struck me right away. Like what a great portfolio that helps me to understand like Pamela and the things that she's thinking about, while also showing off all these like great skills that she's gained by really dedicating herself to making that artwork. Pamela, talk a little bit about what sort of things went into your decisions.
Yeah, for sure. So for my portfolio, I really thought I was very passionate about telling like my story and making sure that that was something that was heard by everybody, and even through my art. Like it was obviously like really hard to kind of figure out what that story was and what I wanted to say with my art, but I think definitely being vulnerable and just being like very honest about like who you are and where you're coming from really just empowers your work even more. And definitely not feeling limited. Like most of my work wasn't like super fancy. Like I didn't, like for me, my mediums, I always refer to them as traditional mediums, like painting and drawing, but it's like really pushing like what you can do with them and what those things can say. Like it's more than just doing a still life or doing this, like figure drawings are all really great things to have in a portfolio, but it's kind of like, how can I show these same skills, but also like just pushing it a little bit more and having those pieces really speak for who I am, that like maybe my essay might not be able to, like I can't capture. And definitely think a lot about the ideas. For me, it was a lot about accessibility. Like I don't know, my dad had old stuff, like an old piece of wood. That was the one on the top right. We just had this old piece of wood in the backyard. And I was like, can I paint on it if you're not going to use it? And even like the bottom 2 wood panels that, I don't know, I was just doing some ink and like charcoal drawings. And I'm like, let's drill holes into it and just see like how that's going to look and how that changes really, but like the piece and the feel of it. So just being very free to experiment and just do whatever feels right to you.
Yeah, thank you. And that's great advice too. I mean, there are things that you can use, and so like just thinking about how you can take the tools or the resources that are available to you and then put your stamp on them to tell your story through them. It really important in this. And everyone's going to have different access to things. But don't let that be a hindrance. You can find ways to express yourself, and we're not judging like what resources you have access to. We're looking at how you're taking what is available to you and then making that something of your own. That's a really powerful thing to point out. Thank you, Pamela. Yeah, well, that is. I'll stop sharing again. I know maybe I went even a little bit long. I get carried away talking, but hopefully that was helpful.
It was very helpful. Thank you, Thomas. And thank you, Maddie and Pamela. for taking us through the journey of how you put together your portfolio. I think a lot of the kids struggle with that. In fact, I have a question from Nandini. She's asking, she's not sure about what specific course she wants to pursue within the visual arts, and wants to know how, what kind of work should she include? Should she have a lot of digital work? Does she need three-dimensional work? And if yes, how many of those?
Sure. My quick answer to that is you don't need anything in particular, but I would love to see the process of you figuring these things out. I don't expect for a high school student to already know exactly what they want to do. In fact, this is another thing that I'll come back to the way that Tufts University is structured. Students don't apply into a specific major. They apply to the school. They talk about the things that they're passionate about, and then they have time to explore. They might be surprised and change their mind. They might find that a professor inspires them, or an area that they've never thought about or had access to really changes their thought about what they want to pursue. We build that right in. So I would say that about the portfolio as well. I'm very interested in how you're making sense of what kind of work you like making. So if you're excited about digital work and you're exploring how you can use that to tell a story or to explore things that are important to you, then I would like to see that work. If you feel like, okay, I don't know, schools want to see a 3D piece, so I made one. I don't really like it, but it shows my range. If that's your rationale ahead of time, then I would say for our portfolio, maybe you don't need that in there. If you stretched yourself and you're like, wow, I'm really excited about what happened when I took that ceramics class or tried out making a wood piece, then absolutely put it in there. To me, it's really about getting to know, like, how are you investing in yourself? Like, how are you spending the time to figure out the things that you like? So not all of that's going to be resolved, and you don't have to tell us ahead of time. We're open to students exploring, trying things, finding out what works for them. So you may find a different answer from different kinds of schools, but my answer would be, you don't need to worry about number of certain things. Like, I want to know a little bit about your journey in art making. So you put in the things that you think, wow, it was hard and I put in a lot of effort and it came out like, I really like what happened. I'm proud of that. That goes in there.
Great, that's fantastic. Another question was about how different what are the differences between an undergraduate portfolio and a portfolio for an application to a postgraduate program?
Yeah, so I can fill that in pretty quickly, and happy to be a resource in the future if people want to ask more questions about it. So at the graduate level, a master's in fine arts program is the terminal degree in an area. So what the faculty are looking for in that sort of portfolio is maybe, as I answered the other one, like, you're exploring, I want to know about your journey. Like, you don't have to have answered the questions. Maybe it's just about, like, I'm trying this and I'm looking at how this works. At the graduate level, there's a little bit more emphasis on, okay, you've spent some time, you've built a body of work, you've already thought about what your voice is in there, you've built technical skills that support that. It's going to change, it's going to transform, but they're looking for a little more cohesion as a body of work. So some portfolios that come in at the undergraduate level, they are already a body of work. Students have kind of thought about those things, but you could absolutely make a portfolio that's just about exploration. Like, you're trying to figure things out, you're finding bits that work for you. At the graduate level, there's a little bit more pressure to have thought about some of that, to think about how your body of work has come together, because that emphasis becomes different in the graduate program. It's not as much about, okay, I'm going to try these different technical areas, and rather it's about, you've got a body of work, and then you're going to have all of these resources and connections and opportunities to show it, and you're going to be like taking it apart, putting it back together, refining, thinking about how it goes out into the outside world. So it's just a little bit different in its emphasis. And something like a post-baccalaureate program is a great bridge. If, for instance, you are very interested in studio art, in earning a master's of fine arts, but maybe you haven't had the studio time to really dig in and find that body of work. A post-baccalaureate program is a program that allows students who are working at the graduate level to really move quickly, to refine skills, to take classes, to push, to think about how all of this knits together into a body of work, and then puts them in a great position to then go on to something like a master's of fine arts program.
There was a quick question about some of the majors that you offer. Do you do interior design, filmmaking at the SMFA?
So filmmaking, yes, there's film, video, animation, all of those things. We're also, for film and video students, we have a kind of unique setup where we also have a film and media studies department, which focuses on maybe more commercial filmmaking techniques. So things like script writing, directing, acting. So there are lots and lots of resources for people exploring those things. Interior design, no. So there is an architecture program, and that is actually outside of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. But students can combine these things, and often, students will be working with studio courses as well. But there's an undergraduate degree in architecture at the school as well, but not a specific track for interior design. You can take those skills and apply them into interior design, and you might put together different things in architecture or installation, and apply those, but not a specific track.
So I want to touch on a couple of things really quickly. In the SMFA supplemental essays, you have one, and I'll just read out the essay prompt. Art has the power to disrupt our preconceptions, shape public discourse, and imagine new ways of being in the world. What are the ideas you'd like to explore in your work? So what are you looking for in this essay?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. And so I'll connect back to something we've been talking about here in terms of the portfolio. We asked that question specifically to help students to talk more about the things that drive them in their art making practice. So again, as a school that is interdisciplinary in its curriculum, the thing that holds all of that together are the things that you set as goals for yourself. You'll get a lot of support, you'll get pushed, you'll get encouraged. There will be people who help you when you reach roadblocks or don't see the way ahead of you. But ultimately, these questions come back to you. In a school like ours, you don't get to just take a back seat to your education. You can't plug in and say, well, I'm a painter, I'm going to take the painting curriculum, or I'm a photographer. And then it's like, well, great, photo 1, 2, 3, that's all set. You've got your curriculum. Instead, we ask questions every semester about what are the things that you're finding? What's interesting to you? What are you loving? What are you not liking? What are the connections you want to make? What other things would enrich this practice? What other things would give you the technical skills that are going to support you, or the professional skills that are going to support you as you go out into the next phases of your life after school? So that question is designed to just kind of like jumpstart that conversation a little. Help us to understand, what are your interests in this area? And they can be, I do want to say, they don't need to be like, many students write about issues that they care about, things that they'd like to express about their identity or background, but also it can be aesthetic concerns. It can be, again, I want to create a space of joy and wonder, with my paintings that are immersive and beautiful. I don't have a right answer for this, but I want to ask students to start thinking about the things that drive them in their practice, because that helps us to see how they're going to make sense of all of these opportunities and resources at our school.
Great. Another quick question. How many students in the BFA program, and do they all take classes at the SMFA in particular?
Yeah, so there are, I'll break it up this way. There are about 600, I would say, students who are in BFA or combined degree, and it's about half and half, so maybe 300 in each. Each incoming class usually is about half combined degree students, half BFA students, in terms of students who are going to use the School of the Museum of Fine Arts as a part of their pathway. And for those students, I would say anyone in the BFA or combined degree is going to be taking some classes on the SMFA campus. Also, I would say that every one of those students is going to be taking classes on the main campus as well. But there are different balance points. A combined degree student is likely to spend maybe half of their time on both campuses, whereas a BFA student has a bit more range. They'll definitely be on the main campus as well as the SMFA campus, but they can, a third of their curriculum is going to be outside of the studio in the BFA program. So they could spend a third of their time on the other campus. They could, one thing that I'll add just as a little nuance here is that there are 2 buildings dedicated to studio arts on the main campus. So there are resources for drawing, painting, design, video, film. There are also other academic courses offered on the SMFA at Tufts campus. So it's not quite as straightforward as anything that's, other academics is going to be on the main campus, and everything that's studio is on the SMFA campus. But there are concentrations, right? The science and engineering complex, that's on the main campus. So if you want to get your hands dirty in a lab and work with some fancy equipment, you're probably going to do it over there. If you want to use a giant press in printmaking, or have access to, all these Hollander beaters to make your own paper, you're going to do that on the SMFA campus. But lots of overlap between those different things. So students really, they participate on both campuses, probably whatever program they're in.
Lots of questions, and I know we're running out of time. Do you offer pre-college summer programs?
Yes, we do. You can find those on the Tufts University Summer Programs website. We have both a design-focused pre-college summer program and a interdisciplinary studio art program that we offer over the summer. So they're both pretty interesting. One is focused a little bit more on design work, and the other is more like this interdisciplinary program where you've got a studio and you have a show and you're making work and drawing on all of the different resources you'd like.
And how much weightage between portfolio and academics for a BFA application at Tufts?
That's a great question. So you want to make sure that you're coming in prepared to succeed inside of this program. So we do, maybe more than some other art schools, pay attention to what is in your academic background. What I will say though is maybe it's not as straightforward as it would appear looking at some of the figures, right? I think people often get the impression, because Tufts is it's a competitive school. If you look at the average test scores and things like that, they tend to just float way up, and people get intimidated. And I'm here to say, like, those are not determinant factors. So we read applications in a holistic manner, meaning there's no one thing that pulls you out of the process. So standardized testing, we don't start with that and say, well, anyone under this number, we're not going to look at. We are going to look at and try to put into context any of these things. Also, we are test optional right now, which is wonderful. So if you are excited about things like that, then you share them with us. And if you do not think that best represents your capabilities, then you don't need to share them with us. So we are going to look at a lot of different things. Your writing, we're going to look at how you do in the classroom, again, and I keep saying this over and over, but it's about context. What is it that you have access to at your school? What are the resources you have? Those are things that are important for us to understand what your grades mean. Are you challenging yourself? Are there classes that are hard for you, but you're finding strategies to stick with it? You don't have to be an A student in every single area if there are ones that you struggle with, but are you able to keep with it, and to, even when an area isn't like your natural affinity isn't there, can you still find strategies to succeed? Those are things that are really important for us to understand. And so we're looking for evidence like that. That being said, I don't know that I could put into a percentage exactly how those two things figure in, but I will say this one last thing. Every kind of student that comes to Tufts University has some things that are important, and they shift between programs. An engineer who is not very good at math and physics makes me concerned, because there's going to be a lot of math and physics, right? A student who's an English major who's not as happy about math and physics, I could see them still being a success at the school, right? So every kind of program is going to have different things that they're looking for inside of the university. So when you fill in a little bit of what things you're excited about, then we're going to be looking at the strengths that are relevant to that. So a BFA student, absolutely, I want to see strength in their portfolio, but I also want to feel confident that they're going to come here and they're not going to struggle. They're going to be able to take the classes and have a really rewarding experience. I want you to love your experience at our school. That's the important thing.
One last question for the panel, for Maddie and Pamela. Why SMFA? Just a quick 30-second response, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So I chose SMFA really because I didn't know what I wanted from my college experience, and SMFA at Tufts offered me like the best of all worlds of college. I knew that I really wanted to pursue my art interests. I also knew that I had a lot of academic interests that were very important to me and have influenced my art. And I'm super grateful that I get to use all of my experiences to influence literally everything I do. It's not just my academic interests influencing my art, but also my art influencing my academic interests, which is really exciting and I didn't even know was possible coming into college. And I would also say the community of people that I've found at SMFA has been incredibly rewarding. Everyone is very supportive and positive, and on all the campuses. So I've never felt uncomfortable sharing my art. And I've always had a really strong, robust support system from my peers, my professors, random people coming up to me saying they love my art. So it's a really great and collaborative community as well.
Thank you, Maddie. And Pamela, for you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. SMFA was like one of the only places that really let me have room for growth and room to really explore what it was I wanted to explore. A lot of other schools I felt like I was limited or really forced to be on one track when I was so indecisive at the time. Like, you're like 17 years old, you don't really know what you want. So it was just really like a breath of like relief that they were offering all these things. And again, like the community has been super supportive. And I was someone that was really interested in computer science, but also really loved art. And I kind of just didn't know what to do with that, like those two split feelings. So SMFA was really the place for me that gave me that space to just like do whatever felt right and just kind of push myself in the direction I needed to be in.
Thank you. And I know many of you are wondering if the SMFA will offer portfolio reviews. Yes, they will. I've just posted the link on the chat, and I will send that out by email as well. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to Thomas. He'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. I also wanted to share with you our next in our series of Exploring the Arts. We have Exploring the Arts with the theater arts with Chris Anderson. He'll be on June 18th at 6 p.m. India Standard Time, which is 8:30 EST. And on June 25th, we have Amy Golden talking about music. Please join us, and we'd be happy to take you on another journey of exploring the arts. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Pamela. It's been wonderful, and you've just shared an encyclopedia of information. It's, I'm sure everyone's really gone away full of knowledge. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and thanks, Maddie and Pamela, for joining us too.
Bye-bye.